Well, the death of Cyrus Mistry in that horrific car accident is an incredible loss to corporate India. Joining us now, somebody who knows him, who's known him very well, who's worked with him very closely, Mukund Rajan. Mr. Rajan was the brand custodian and member of the Group Executive Council in the Tatas and worked under Cyrus Mistry very, very closely. Thanks very much for being with us. Despite the many differences that emerged with the Tatas, how was Cyrus Mistry deeply committed to sustaining the core values that the Tata Group stood for? How was that essentially his ultimate battle?
Well, in all my interactions with him, in discussing what needed to be done to present the Tata brand to all our stakeholders, I felt that Cyrus was somebody who deeply cared about the brand. He cared about the kind of legacy that he had been entrusted with and the way in which the future would view his role and the way in which he had helped to shape the Tata Group. Never did I once see an occasion when he would compromise on core values. Just to give you a couple of illustrations, there was once a discussion about opportunities in the continent of Africa, in some states where clearly there were compromises expected from a group like ours. He preferred to walk away from business rather than allow any possible hint of a taint to attach to the way in which we approached business opportunities in other countries.
Yeah.
Similarly, in India, whenever there was a issue of an extreme climatic event, as we saw in Uttarakhand 7 or 8 years back, as we saw in Nepal when the earthquake happened, as we saw in Kashmir when the floods happened, he was the first to insist that we mount a group-wide program to help the communities that had been affected. And some of the largest contributions ever in the Tata Group's history were marshaled from the various Tata companies, and in partnership with the Tata charities, these efforts were mounted in these states to support communities in need. He felt that the Tata brand had been built on the twin pillars of our commitment to corporate governance and a commitment to giving back to society. And that was something he ensured whenever he had the opportunity, that those are values that he would stand strongly behind. So great loss, I think, for Tata's, great loss for the country, particularly what has happened in the last few years.
Yeah. Mr. Rajan, was he bitter, at Ratan Tata at the end, the fact that someone he was once so close to ended up being involved in this lengthy legal battle against him?
He was certainly unhappy with the turn of events. He did believe that there were perhaps people who had played a mischievous role in communicating what he stood for and the kind of future that he wanted to create for the Tatas. He felt that Mr. Tata had perhaps been misinformed on multiple occasions. Certainly in all my encounters with him, I found that he was somebody who simply did not want to have any association with some of the good initiatives of the Tata Group. He wanted to give credit where it was due, or where he felt it was due, whether it was the CEOs of the group or whether it was his predecessor, Mr. Tata. He never tried to take the credit for himself. And he was astounded when there were suggestions that perhaps people in Mr. Tata's close group felt that he was trying to take the group in a different direction, trying to get credit for himself, perhaps change things and change the values of the group in a manner that Mr. Tata would not approve of. And I think that started the set of issues that we then saw, which eventually led to his separation from the group and then the lengthy court cases. Yep. The court cases themselves tell a story. I think he was very keen to clear his name, to demonstrate that whatever he did was in the best interest of the Tatas. And I think till the end, he was fighting to really establish that he had a point of view which could not be ignored by key stakeholders of the Tatas.
So was the legal battle essentially about protecting his honor, the fact that he believed that he was very badly wronged?
I believe so. I believe so.
Now, in your book, Brand Custodian, you've described Cyrus Mistry as somebody who wasn't insecure, that he was willing to work as part of a team. And, you spoke briefly about it, give credit where it was due. Could you tell us a little bit about that style of working within the Tatas, which you felt was essentially him?
I think he was somebody who already had seen power, had seen significant responsibility in his own family's enterprise. When he took on the Tata role, I think he had a very clear sense of what kind of future he wanted to architect. And he was very self-confident. He could very quickly get to the core of a set of issues, understand what kind of challenges a company might be facing, the kind of support the CEOs would need, and then went all out to deliver that to them.
Right.
Occasionally, there were companies where he didn't find the right leadership in place, and he would take steps in a kind and gentle manner to ease out the leadership and find a replacement. So I think he knew what the group required, and at all times he wanted to do it in lockstep with the kind of values the group is known for. I mean, this was brought home to me very strongly, for instance, in some of the discussions we had about the future of Tata Steel's British operations, a country that is so far away from India that perhaps you could be excused for not really caring very much about what might happen to the local population. But I know for a fact that when Port Talbot, the Tata Steel plant in Wales in the UK, was considered to be potentially a shutdown candidate, the first thing Cyrus wanted to do before any discussions progressed on that potential possibility was to ensure that we had all the backstop if required to retrain all the workers, because a large part of the population in that part of the world depends on the steel plant for their livelihood. He said, we're not going to go ahead unless we can do the right thing by the community. So I think he had a very clear sense of how he needed to navigate. He was able to marshal resources and people around him. And he was extremely self-confident, which is what allowed him to, I think, surround himself with really smart people. And he was, I think, fantastic with numbers, excellent financial acumen, and at the same time, a very, very humble and understated leader. In many ways, very similar to Ratan Tata himself, which is why it is even more tragic that the two of them fell apart.
Is it sad in a sense that as of now, Mr. Tata hasn't issued a public statement? Speaking about the death of Cyrus Mistry.
I don't know. Each individual will make their own choices. I do know Mr. Tata was extremely hurt by many of the allegations that were leveled in the media and otherwise some of the filings in court. Obviously, there was huge bitterness between the two individuals. But one would hope that, now there is obviously no reconciliation that is going to ever be possible. But people need to put the past behind and just look ahead. I think both individuals wanted the best for the Tatas. And I think it is what is owed, I think, to the Indian public that the memory of what Cyrus stood for continues to inform a lot of what the Tata Group strives to achieve in the years ahead.
A final question, the NCLT upheld all of, Mr. Mistry's charges, yet the Supreme Court took a diametrically different view. How did he deal with this? The fact that, he was seen to be winning, he did win at the NCLT level to a certain extent, it went to the Supreme Court and then it all came collapsing on him. Was he ever able to completely deal with the loss legally that he had to accept?
Cyrus was somebody who had a huge amount of willpower. I think towards the end, he also, in some fashion, also became a little bit spiritual in his recognition that you don't always get what you think is right and different points of view operate. He was a realist in that sense. He would counsel us sometimes when we thought things were not happening the right way and, tell us that, you have to accept what gets handed out to you. You take it on the chin and you move on. So he would have been upset, no doubt. He was upset, he was disappointed. But that was it. The best he could pull out of that situation was to get the Supreme Court earlier this year to amend some of the particularly vitriolic comments I thought had been made about his personal agenda. And the court, in all fairness, did make those amendments. So I think he would have felt that to some extent, his point of view had been seen. But certainly, I think in the broader community, a lot of people would feel that many of the issues he brought up were the right issues and that he really wanted the best and the right things for the Tata Group. And the group would be, I think, in a bad place if it chose to ignore a lot of what he tried to bring out and the issues that he thought were important to address.
One final question. In the last couple of years, the Shapoorji Pallonji group has faced a lot of financial difficulties and challenges, a restructuring exercise. But under him, there is a sense that they were over the worst. And, they were on the verge of getting back to what we've known them to be, an incredible company, huge in terms of construction in India. Just a few months back, he lost his father and now he's gone. So what happens to the group?
I'm not close to the Shapoorji Pallonji group, so I don't think it would be fair for me to comment. Obviously, it will be a massive blow to the family and to the leadership there. But the extent to which he was involved in operations of the group is something I'm not familiar with. I do know that in recent years, he was spending a lot of time on his own personal ventures, including the equivalent of venture capital investments. So those obviously would also suffer. But the impact on the Shapoorji group, besides obviously the emotional upheaval that they must be going through just now, is something I'm not in a position to comment.
Right, Mr. Rajan. Thank you so much for speaking to us and sharing your thoughts. It is an incredible loss for corporate India and for India at large. A man who at such a young age achieved so much. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you.